My watch says 5:01. We have enough board members present, both in person and online, so we'll get started. I'd like to call the Patricia A. Hannaford Regional Technical School District Board meeting to order. It's Thursday, June 9th. It's actually 5:01. May I start with the introduction of board members? Steve, please.
Yorzak, Middlebury for ACSD.
Nick Colston, living in Shoreham, representing ACSD.
Linda Barrett, clerk.
Steve Rudy from Starkville, representing MAUSD.
Judd Markowski, resident of Bridgeport and WIB member.
Tiffany Love, Middlebury, and WIB member.
Christina Macklin from North Ferrisburg, and I'm the Addison Northwest School District rep.
Suzanne Buck, and since everyone started saying where they live, I live in Bridgeport, and I'm from ACSD. And Kim?
Tim Farnan from New Haven, and I'm the community at large member for the Mount Haven School District.
And then administrators. Whoever wants to start.
Oh, Dana Peterson, Superintendent, Patricia A. Hannaford Regional Technical School District.
And Jay Stutzel, Assistant Director for the Patricia Hannaford Person.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as printed?
So moved.
Been moved by Judd. Is there a second?
Second.
And second by Christina. Is there any discussion? Do we have any adjustments?
There is staffing under 445, and we don't have anything to present at that
Okay,
point.
so
if you'd like to-
we will remove staffing
Yep.
from the agenda. Is there any other changes?
Staff hiring, is that the one you're talking about?
The staff
Yeah.
hiring, yes. Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. And I thought we were going to have a visitor because there's somebody's notebook there, but I guess that must have been left from a previous meeting, so I don't, is there any visitors online, Jay?
No,
No? Okay.
just Kim.
Just Kim. Is there any correspondence, Dina?
Yes, actually, there is one piece of correspondence from Doug Atwood, just indicating that he's writing to the school board. Good day, ladies and gentlemen of the board. As my retirement approaches, I would like to request, according to the master agreement 6.6, that I be reimbursed for 30 days out of the 90 days of sick leave that I would keep. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
Did we read that last time?
So we did, yeah.
Did I read it last time?
Yeah.
That's all right. You can read it twice.
Sorry,
That's all right.
Patrice told me that it was on the 23rd agenda, and I said, oops, I must have meant to put it on this agenda, so.
That's all right.
All right,
It's
never
always-
mind, then that has already been executed. I thought I hadn't brought it to the board.
That's okay, but since you brought up Doug's name, as you know, for the board, we wish him well in his retirement and hope that he enjoys it. Maybe
Great.
we'll see him along the roadside somewhere doing something, you know, being creative. Maybe he'll join Judd in his bicycle affair. I don't know, maybe he plays an instrument and can join the accordion.
There we go.
But we wish him well and thank him for all of his years of service.
I will pass that along.
So, we approved the consent agenda, so I'm presuming that no one needed to make any changes to the minutes of May 26th. Hearing nothing, we'll proceed on to the accounts. Nick, would you read those, please?
Yeah. So the general fund was for $129,553. The revolving fund had $5,375. Student activities was $3,476. This is all for the month of May. Makery, nothing. Payroll, two payrolls, one for $81,884 and the other one for $89,787. That's it.
Thank you. And I would like to say that doing the bills has become, I think, a lot easier as we've moved through the years. They're a lot clearer, and that credit card bill has become so much easier to deal with.
It's still enormous.
It is still enormous, but it's not as enormous as it was. So, the business office has done a very nice job.
Yeah. So may I comment just a little bit about that?
Yeah.
The reason that it has been significantly reduced is it now runs through AP, which is what Austin had set up just sometime last year. So instead of actually having to put purchases on the credit card for things that go through Amazon, they are now able to be billed. And so Amazon sends us an AP and we pay it that way, which makes it a lot more transparent and clear. So Amazon was our biggest credit card client, or we were Amazon's biggest credit card client. But anyway, so now that those run through AP, it has significantly reduced the number of credit card purchases. So it's, I believe, about 25 to 30% of what it used to be. So
Oh, at least.
significantly cut that down.
It used to be painful.
And it's relatively easy because I'm doing those internal controls because we don't have a business manager. And I find it fairly easy to go through those credit cards now, the way that Shane has it set up. Yes?
Jeb?
Just without, I don't have a whole lot, I've done the bills a couple of times, so I don't have previous experience with it. It doesn't mean that there's less spending going on, it just means it's not going through the credit card, it's going directly through billing, right? Okay,
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. We used to get like this Amazon chunk that was like this,
Yeah, okay.
and then
It was also more difficult to track
It was difficult.
in
Yeah.
terms of which department was ordering it, because you would just have a large bill with the amounts, and tracking down whose charge it was problematic. The other thing that I want to point out with respect to, I'm not sure which was we're doing now, but since we're on the
well,
topic.
we're talking about them.
The number of times that the credit card has been used, lost, misplaced, or something else has gone to almost zero. There are now 4 controlled cards. Each of one of four people are designated to have one, and those 4 people are responsible for placing any of those credit card orders. So we used to have a number of times during the course of a year where a credit card was replaced, or there was some fraudulent charges or something else, and those have been reduced to almost zero. So I just wanted to thank the business office for the changes that they have implemented in controlling the use of credit card purchases. So
We have certainly noticed it, and we appreciate it, and every time I'm in there, I'm saying how thankful I am.
it does make it a lot easier to go through the accounts.
And Shane has had to deal with less questions from me, so.
We also have a special meeting each month to see what are the questions Suzanne might ask and how do we answer them before.
They do.
That's on the special meeting.
They
plan.
do, because I'll ask a question and Shane will say, you know what? Dana told me you were going to ask that question, so I've got an answer for it. And I'm like, oh no.
That's what you get when your superintendent does your
No
internal
answer.
control AP review. So.
Okay, action on ESPCVA. Kim, do you want to chat about it? Take us through it? You were the chair.
She's on mute.
She's on mute.
Suzanne, can you tell us what those initials stand for,
I believe at the last meeting, I discussed all the changes already, and the question was that the actual physical document had to be updated and printed, and it appears that has happened. If anyone has any questions about those changes, I would entertain them, but I question whether or not I should go over them again.
So Kim, just to let you know, I think I put this in the email to folks when I sent this out earlier in the week. All of those changes were the same changes that we reviewed last time. They are they highlighted in yellow. Those will be taken out before the final document is published, once you've taken action on the item. And they are in the appropriate place in there, so anybody on the negotiations team, if you had any reservations, please let me know and we'll correct them. But it wasn't at midnight when I was sending this one out, so I think my head was a little more focused.
I can't speak for the rest of the committee, but I don't know if they had any issues with that, Judd or Suzanne.
I'm satisfied with it. I felt like you gave it a good rundown the last time.
Oh, and what I did was, it was serendipitous, but Lisa and I met to go over the document and the changes.
Good.
We seem to be in sync, so.
Thank you for doing that, so
You're quite
that we
welcome.
know we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
I make a motion to accept it.
Motion to accept the agreement
Yes.
has been made. Is there a second?
Second?
Seconded by Kim to accept the ESP
Yeah, CBA.
ESP CBA. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Just for the camera, for people who might be listening in, Linda asked the question about what the acronym ESP CBA stands for, and that just so that people who are trying to follow along online. The ESP is the Educational Support Personnel Unit of the Collective Bargaining Unit, and the CBA is the Collective Bargaining Agreement, so otherwise known as the Master Agreement. Sorry, that was me trying to be efficient and working on the agenda with Suzanne that I abbreviated and probably should have spelled it out.
All right, looks like Shane's on. Is Shane doing 2.4 financial planning and budget?
I don't think so. Shane, I don't think you're going to do I don't think you're going to do financial planning and budget, although I'm happy to turn it over to you, but I think you gave me all of the information that I needed to do that, so.
I have full faith in you, Dana.
Thanks, Shane. So this is a fairly routine report. So what I'm going to do in the interest of time is not read the first two items on here. You can look at those yourself, but those have not changed since the last reporting at the April meeting, I believe. I will read the third one just for the audience that is listening in at home, perhaps. So number 3 is that there will be no fiscal plans that provide less for the board prerogatives during the year than is set forth in the government's investment policy. And so what I want to highlight is that there are no programs or major expenditures that have been added to the current year budget that have not been approved by the board of directors. I do want to note that there have been additional Perkins allocations that we have received in the amount of $29,696, and I have taken requests from various programs for equipment and supplies and materials that would support that. And we have placed those orders, and all of those orders will be reimbursed with funds from that Perkins allocation. We have a Perkins allocation that gives us the supplemental amount. Reimbursements will be requested in the next few weeks for that. We also received a transportation reimbursement. We put in a request for $7,344.64. That happened on May 15th. That provides supplemental support for any transportation that we run for programming, whether that's out to North Campus or to one of our satellite campuses. Could be out at the Woodlot or at the Sugarwoods. And that we expect that to be in before the end of June. We also received our April state allocation of $395,287. that is a regular payment that comes in the third or fourth quarter of each year from the state. And then the final thing that I want to note is that there has been a bond anticipation note, which you approved previously, of $2 million for our capital project. That's been executed, and the money has been deposited in a special designated account in Peoples/M&T Bank. And we reported on that, and we took action on that at the last meeting. That's all I have to report. And I report compliance with respect to executive limitations on policy 212.
Is there any questions for Dana and/or Shane?
Shane, you got all these questions?
Oh, Nick's got one.
Well, I hadn't really paid attention to the last line. There's an invoice for the capital project, and the invoice will be paid through the next AP cycle.
Yes.
So, is there gonna be a list of approvers for that prior to it getting to Suzanne and myself, or?
No, I don't think so, because all of those have been basically pre-approved as a result of the contract that we signed with EEI. So they will be
seeing a detail for the 150,613, no?
on the next, where is it, payables report in July, you'll probably see anything that is bond related that doesn't currently exist, because these only went through May, and that has.
Yes. But the 150,613 will have been approved by the review committee or by somebody prior to it coming to AP? What will be the approval process for that?
We will be invoiced, and those invoices will be screened probably by me, because we do not need a purchase order for those, because it's an ongoing project, and we know that the total amount is $8 million.
Yeah.
So what you will probably see is an accounting of those, because Shane and I receive those from EEI, from EEI's billables.
Right.
And then I do a purchase request, right, Shane? That's what I've done on the last one, but we don't need a purchase order. Is that correct?
That is correct, but we do have a purchase order for that 150 and change.
Oh, we do,
Correct.
okay, yeah. But that won't be required moving forward, because we know that that's ongoing costs, is that right? Well, actually, we had talked about that. You wanted to have that for tracking purposes, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So we will be doing a purchase order for each one of those, so that we can track them through our.
And will there be an Excel spreadsheet tracking the current invoice?
There won't be an Excel spreadsheet, but it will all be tracked in our financial software. Correct, Shane?
Yes, it's its own fund.
It's its own fund.
Right.
So if we need a report, we could always generate a report with all of the dates and the payables. So, when they're doing bills, Shane, you and I haven't talked about this yet, but when we're doing AP review, there'll be a list generated as there is currently for all of the other payroll, enterprise, not payroll, AP, enterprise, general fund, and student activities, right?
Yes, there'll be director's orders
Yeah, okay,
to review.
great.
Okay, good.
Sorry, I didn't fully understand your question.
Yeah.
Steve?
So EEI is sending you like an AIA requisition,
Yes,
and,
they call it an invoice though.
okay, so it'll be broken down by division, and, you know,
It's very
maybe
detailed.
general requirements is all there is right now, because there's no real probably construction activity that's happened.
There was no construction. It was all supplies and other things that were
Startup costs.
startup costs, that's correct.
And
And it's pretty detailed. Shane, do you remember?
assuming
It was a
that-
detailed
assuming that,
invoice of that.
that, is it Mike from PCI?
Marty,
Marty from PCI. will
right.
also be
He'll be reviewing those as well. I forgot to mention that to
Okay.
your question.
So he'll be signing off on
You should.
He will be tracking them. I'm the one who's approving them, he'll be tracking.
Right, he'll look at them.
So there will be a spreadsheet somewhere.
Nick just wants a spreadsheet.
Well, I'd like to see how we're going,
So Nick,
not just invoice by invoice.
The requisitions should have in an A&A format, total amount of the contract, the divisions that have been spent so
That's
far,
right,
balance
right.
to finish.
That's right.
and that's in there on the printed reports that we received from EEI.
Right.
But what will be put into the financial software is the amount of the invoice, who is billing for it, and the date.
Okay.
We are not, I mean, maybe Marty will be doing that, but I'm not looking for a detailed cost breakdown of every single ladder, cone, or hammer that is purchased.
No.
They won't break it down.
No, they won't.
No, I'm just saying that,
No, they won't break it down.
okay, I'm just
But
letting,
Marty's your eyes in the field to say, oh yeah, they have got half the siding up. or
right, and he'll be
whatever.
signing off on the completion of various aspects and projects, because that's why we hired him. Because in a month I will,
Or they're billing for stored materials, we know.
That's right.
That's where they are.
exactly right. Yep, that's my understanding. Steve, just look at
Are there any other questions around 2.4? I believe we have a motion on the table that's been seconded to approve.
No, we don't. No,
We don't, okay, so.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
So moved by Steve Rooney, seconded by Nick, to approve policy 2.4, financial planning and budgeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. Corporate resolutions, approve revenue anticipation note, and then approve authorization of invoice payments, and approve signatures of accounts.
So my apologies, Suzanne, when you asked about modifications to the agenda, it's only number one that we'll
Okay.
be looking at tonight. The other two will be presented on the 23rd. We're still working with National Bank of Middlebury to get all of the updated language and signatories on that. We were working on whether it was going to be a paper copy form or whether it was going to be digital. We went with paper copy so that we could actually do the signatures at a board meeting. It just hasn't arrived in time for this meeting, and we
Okay.
decided late in the day to make that adjustment. So we'll present those on the 23rd.
All right, so we are looking at approved revenue anticipation note. Shane?
I can cover it, Shane, I think. So you should have in your packet something that looks like this, draft, and it's the resolution.
Okay.
And it's basically, this is the resolution for our loan in anticipation of taxes. And at the top, you have $1,200,000. That is slightly higher than last year, probably because our budget for next year is slightly higher than this year's budget was. Everything else in there is, it indicates that it will be, the balance and interest will be due on June 30th, 2023. That's next June. And it requests that we have the board of directors sign this as witness of the action that you're taking, that you're going to accept this note. And then we will have our treasurer, Jane, also sign it.
So if the board is to sign it, do we have one that does not say draft through the middle of it?
Shane, that's a question for you. Do we have one that's not marked draft?
I thought that that's what Chris had sent, was the one that didn't say draft, so yes, I think we do.
Okay, so I may have to try and print that afterwards, because the only one that I have in my packet is the one that says draft. Okay. So if you go through the next couple of pages, it has all of the traditional language that we sign every year with respect to the line of credit. I don't think there were any language changes this year, Shane, from last year.
Correct, not to my knowledge either.
And the key thing is on page 2 of that. Borrower agrees and acknowledges that the purpose of the This loan is operating expenses in anticipation of tax revenues, which was approved by the district board of directors. Why does it say June 3rd, 2022?
So that, I don't know.
That should say June 9th, correct? Shane?
Correct.
All right, I'm going to make a note of that. I did not catch that. I'll call it. That's my bad, Shane.
Well, it's also.
Didn't read carefully.
So it's twice, a witness swear off
Yeah.
on his third day, it should be ninth day.
Right.
Does it have third anywhere else?
Yeah, it does. On
Oh,
page
under
one
number
and
3, it
two.
says third.
Yeah.
Yep, that's my fault.
Well, you didn't write the document.
No, I didn't, but I did read it, and I didn't catch it until just now. Okay.
And then on this one, the 9th. Maybe it was the date that whoever typed this up,
They got it to us on the 3rd.
that's why. they
That's
put
probably
third.
right, yeah.
The one that doesn't say draft is probably corrected.
It might be corrected. Sorry, Shane?
Shane, did you say
The
something?
third day, we received the documents. I
Right,
think that's why you're saying the third.
Yeah, but it's referring to a meeting of the board of directors, which did not happen, so we'll correct that.
and Shane, when does this all need to be signed by?
It just needs to be, go ahead, Shane.
I don't see why this couldn't get postponed until the 23rd, really.
It can. We were just hoping to get the signatures taken care of.
I didn't realize the dates were incorrect on there.
Yeah, I've owned that one already.
So we,
If you'd like to table, you can take a
I make a
motion to
motion
table.
to table it.
so there's a motion to table, is there a second?
Second.
Second by
Go for it, Steve.
Steve Orzek to table the resolution, corporate resolution for approved revenue anticipation note until June 23rd. Is there any discussion on it? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed.
So Shane, we'll just review this tomorrow and make sure that we get everything over to Chris so that that can be updated with the date of the 23rd on it.
Correct, yes, I apologize that it was incorrect.
Yeah, me too.
We accept both of your apologies. Mistakes do happen.
Thank you.
I've been told
Shouldn't
that no
have.
one's perfect.
Pretty easy one to make.
Moving on, we have reauthorized the community engagement committee charge. And in digging around and asking people and finding out that it was read at a board meeting, but it wasn't written down.
Linda did a good job of indicating that it had been read,
Yes,
so we want to compliment Linda on her
it was read.
attention to the detail.
So I continued on, and what I have found was that the charge was to promote ownership of the Career Center with the community, including business partners, and it was to encourage interest in supporting programming here, the center, through advisory membership. So moving back and forth, and so that was the charge. Kind of broad, kind of vague, purposely, I think, done such that you can put a lot of community outreach underneath that. So,
We
yeah.
might want to put that in writing for,
yes, I think Linda's over there scrolling quickly. Did you get it all?
Of course.
So it was read and Linda recorded it for prosperity. Is there any discussion about that charge or anybody?
So, is there, what's the need to reaffirm the charge?
We couldn't
Was
find,
there a sunset, or there just wasn't
We
a record
couldn't-
of the charge?
there was no, it was read, that was the record.
I see.
A lot of times charges get reviewed once a year too, so.
Well, I was,
Yeah.
the reason I brought it up is I'm wondering if we should be reviewing the
Budget policy.
Budget and
policy committee
and,
charge
yeah.
and the facilities charge and.
Yeah.
More than, oh.
And the
more
main
than-
reason, like, the facilities committee, you were already on it.
Yeah, just started the month before.
But Steve and I were new, and
Right.
we probably don't know the full extent of the wording of the charge,
Not at all.
so it would probably be a good
If
thing
you'd
to
like, we'll dig and find charges for anything
put it on our
else.
next agenda and just take a look at it.
Yep,
Suzanne, can you read that charge again?
to promote ownership of the Career Center within the community, including business partners, to encourage interest in supporting programming through the advisory membership.
Okay.
I mean, I guess in this group, this is the group that would revise that charge, right? I mean, the
Yeah.
committee can't revise the charge, but this
Right.
group can.
But the committee would typically look at it and make
Make a
recommendations.
recommendation.
Yeah, which we have
Yeah.
not really
Yeah.
done. So maybe
Hmm.
that's what we need to do next, is look at it in committee
We can do that.
and then, unless everybody thinks it's perfectly done.
I think the people on the committee might have a better idea.
Yeah.
Whether the charge is working or not, or they need the board to modify it, so I don't know.
So, if you'd like, I'll take a motion to send it to committee for final review, and then they can send it back to us.
If memory serves me correctly, since this is a board operation, the chair offers the charge, just like the chair appoints committee members. This could be some input, but I don't think that the board needs to take action on that. You can remand that yourself to the committee to take a look at, and that's what you would do for each of the other charges if you want. But the board sets that charge, I don't think, excuse me, the chair sets the charge.
Oh,
So that's my understanding.
oh,
Hmm.
you know I have
That's
so
not
much
how our
power.
board operates.
Yeah, that's
That's
not,
not-
No.
that's not how our board operates either.
So the
So
board
there's a
puts
difference, I
together the
think.
charge?
Yeah, the
Well,
board
the
agrees
board
on the
has
charge.
final say on
Okay.
approval, yes. Yeah.
So, is your board a governance board? Is that why
It
there
is
might
not
be a
a
difference?
policy governance board, so
Ours
maybe
is.
that's
So that might be the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be.
Ours
That
is,
could be.
ours is a policy governance board, and we vote on our charges.
You do, okay.
Okay.
I
I
stand.
think it's good practice, isn't it?
Yeah,
Why would it?
I mean, and I think actually VSBA has a policy on, that talks about different committees and kind of gives a overall suggestion as to what their charges might be, but,
I think we even vote on the committee members.
Yeah, we do too. We appoint committee members,
Right.
and it's a vote.
oh,
Yeah,
yeah, well,
I don't know that that's required by,
No.
Yeah, I don't know.
That could just be
I think that's,
board
that's,
practice. or
that's
whatever.
board
it could be
practice.
practice, right?
yeah. I know in another board that we sit on that people make suggestions as to what committees they'd like to be on, and they may or may not be placed on those committees by the board chair.
I
So-
should know the answer to this, but is there a policy that refers to community engagement?
Yes, there is one from VSBA.
No, I mean our policy governance.
Oh.
Yeah.
There, it just addresses that, from time to time, those committees can be, formed. And I think in our bylaws, rather than in the policy governance, it tells what are the standing committees that you have.
Okay, but not what you do or don't.
I don't know if the charge is there, but I can look that up.
Okay, I was just
Steve
curious.
Rooney?
So the rules about creating committees and who does what to create the committees and who gives the charges, that must be written down.
It's in the bylaws.
It's in the bylaws.
You have 4 standing.
It's not in policy, it's in bylaws?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Now, you have, I think statutorily, you have the ability to create an ad hoc committee if something pops up
Yes.
that needs. But that would be a creation by the board and be voting to do that. But these committees already exist and have been identified in the bylaws, I believe. I'm gonna check that for you.
I
Okay.
believe they are in the bylaws. I think I saw that once.
Well, that should
I
then,
don't-
that should then
You need to look at
explain.
this.
I don't read the bylaws every week, so,
Right,
But the charge is not in there, if I remember correctly.
That might be something for policy governance committee to look at. Just what does the bylaws say about creating committees and who modifies the charges and who appoints?
There, Dana's got the bylaws right now.
I'm pulling up, yeah.
Are they on the website?
They should be, but I can't say where they are, because these were just revised in February.
Because
when
we
changed
made
the
that
language.
date change.
So I'm going through now. If you want to move on to something else that doesn't
Okay.
require me, I will
Um,
come back to you soon.
well, unfortunately, the next thing does require you,
Okay.
but we can skip over that while you're looking for that legislative focus meeting.
Well, Suzanne, did we finish with the?
He's looking for an answer.
Oh, we're gonna come
So,
back to it?
We're gonna come back to it,
Okay.
because he's looking for an
Yeah,
answer for you.
okay.
So, legislative focus meeting, is there anything in particular that you might like our legislators to come and speak to us on? Or is there something in particular you would like me to say that we would like to discuss with them?
Well, I imagine that the CLNA process might be a good thing to go over with them.
Okay?
That's probably the most important thing going on here right now, as far as the work,
And the capital project.
the capital project, yeah.
Steve Orzick, it sounded like you wanted to say something.
Well, I know that we're funded in a different way, but the way that the change that's happening in the student weighting, that changes,
Yeah, that doesn't affect us.
well, it doesn't affect us, but
There's another change that they're working on, that if that comes to pass, that will affect how our,
That's the one, that's the Act 89.
yeah, and that's the one that Ruth referred to the other day with the reports coming out in the spring. So there's a whole nother process that they're working on, but was put on hold when something called COVID rolled into town.
yeah.
And so that one, I know there's a report due out, but not until next spring. So I only know one person that's on the committee. I don't know who else is. We could ask about the report and who's on the committee.
Yeah, I mean, when Ruth Hardy talked to us, she went through, and said, oh yeah, we talked about this, we talked about that. And I didn't think to ask at the time, because of the different funding model, but there's no waiting in there at all for students going to a career center or doing something that's not, and I would think that would be something that they would consider. I mean, if they're talking about it's more expensive to educate a high school student because they have to pay for lab materials and there's different instructors and things like that. Yeah, there's a lot of resources that go into the career center. Shouldn't that also be something that gets factored into the funding? I mean, if schools get an extra amount of money because their students are going to a career center, that would motivate them, I would think, to send more money towards, or at least encourage students to go to career centers.
Dana, you want to take that one?
Yeah. The way it works, Steve, is that the Career Center sets the budget, and then all of the districts are assessed.
Right.
And that funding comes from a couple of sources right now. There are direct payments to the state, by the state to the career centers. And then there is the tuition component, which is raised at the local level to make up for the difference in that. But the districts, when they pay their tuition, are paying a fraction of the cost anyway of the CTE, maintenance of CTE program. And that, in the overall amount to be raised is broken down by the FTE count on a 6-semester trailing average. So it's somewhat arbitrary how that funding is currently done. The recommendation from the Act 89 committee was to have there be direct payments to career centers across the state from the Ed Fund, and that the amount, there would be no assessment to various high school districts to cover that. So there would be no disincentive. And statewide, at least the original proposal was that everybody would be assessed based on the number of students in their region who would be eligible to attend. And that's how the money would be apportioned and assessed.
Rather than actual state
Yes.
numbers.
Right, because one of the issues that has arisen is that there is a disincentive if you are paying a tuition fee
Right.
per student, that if you want to keep that, if you want to control that, then you set an arbitrary cap, which is contrary to what state law allows. So it would be removing that disincentive
So the funding would come directly from the Ed Fund
to the career
rather
center.
than the tuitioning that we do
Correct.
to the sending district.
It's a very complex system right now with
Sure.
multiple sources, some being locally derived and some being provided through the Ed Fund, and others being supported by either state or federal grant monies. So that makes for quite a potpourri of funding, and not an easy way, as Brad James will tell you, to track.
So you were saying, Dana, that right now, the state does make some direct payments, and the
Yes,
schools pay a fraction of that through their tuition charge or their assessment charge.
correct.
So really, if nothing changed, the only thing that would make some sense was for the weighting study to address that small portion back on the sending school side, because that student might have an additional cost just for that assessment.
There has been no consideration given to the needs of students attending career centers, except indirectly through the supports or the financial support to districts that have students that fall into those categories.
Right.
So theoretically, there would be, a student who needed more supports would have those supports provided to them to access the career center as they would any other program.
Right.
But that's only theoretical, and
Right.
there is no provision for career centers to receive a direct payment on the weighting study. That has created a little bit of consternation with some directors around the state.
And that sounds like that's what they're trying to address by doing the direct payment and taking the
Yes,
tuition.
that's correct. Well, it's a separate, it is a separate approach, but it would arrive at the same outcome.
Yeah.
But to pertain to your, what you want to talk to them about.
Right.
If Peter Conlon and Ruth Hardy are coming, they're on those committees, they would, I'm sure, have something to say about that,
Okay,
so.
so Act 89,
Yeah.
waiting, CLNA process, capital project. We could be here all night on those. Anybody else want to throw something on the table?
Just if they've got any feedback for us in terms of, linkage with the business community or, career partners.
Okay. All right. Kim, did you have any words of wisdom?
I think I'll bring them up when they're there face to face. I have concerns about, they talk about tech and how important it is and so on, but what are they actually doing about it? And the lack of funding from the feds, and do they intend to put any money our way?
Okay. All right. So I'll draft a letter. I'll share it with you all, and the invite will go out hopefully by Monday, and if not sooner, you may also take bits and pieces out of it, send it to any of your other friends that might be in the legislature that I'm sending it to, but the more they get invited. We talked to Ruth Hardy, and she's got another commitment, but she might be able to make it.
Suzanne, will you give us a list of people
Yeah.
that you've contacted or?
I'll share the letter, and then in the email, I'll say this went to all of these people and with their emails, so that you can reach out to them yourself also.
Okay.
Okay, I don't think that really needs a motion, so we're gonna go back to, Dana had the bylaws up.
Yes, and I did find those.
We'll go back to the
and-
CEC question.
Dana,
But-
just a reminder, that's at North Campus, meeting on the 23rd. So however you're inviting them, that they know that.
Okay,
So it's not, we have to move that off, it's gonna be North Campus instead of 828.
yep, all right.
And the special meeting next Thursday that we're still going to warn Patrice and I tomorrow will also be at North Campus.
Oh, okay,
Yep. Because this room will already be in the process of being disassembled
okay,
for work starting the following
okay.
day of the week. The other thing that I could comment on before I go to CLNA, it's a good transition.
Well, you were going to do the bylaws, but the
Oh, bylaws, yeah. But the CLNA with Ruth Hardy, we had a meeting with Ruth to go over some of the things that were creating points of confusion. We can actually review some of those details on the 23rd.
Okay.
She and Ruth Durkee, and I think you were there.
Yes.
Yeah. So that worked really well. Okay, so with respect to the bylaws, the board may from time to time, this is in Article 5, with respect to committees, standing committees and special committees, the board may from time to time establish and abolish such standing committees or special committees as it desires. No standing or special committee may exercise the authority of the board. Unless
So the
there's
board makes the committees.
The board makes the committees, the membership, Section 2, unless otherwise determined by the board, the chairperson of the board shall appoint members to various committees. So that's just an appointment.
Does this say anything about the charge?
It does not. The charge is not in there. And I didn't think that it was, but I have seen somewhere, and that may be in,
I think the VSBA,
it may also be in one of the
our governance policies,
governance policies.
Yes,
I will check on that.
we'll work on that. So, to reauthorize the CEC charge, do I have a motion to refer to committee, or do you just want me to leave it as it is for now, and what's your pleasure, folks?
What do you think?
let the committee look at it, come back with any recommendations.
So is that a motion, Nick?
Do you want to move motion for that?
Please.
I recommend that, well, I move that the committee review the charge and come back with any changes they feel necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Yeah, second. Is there any further conversation on it? Steve Rooney looks like he wants to say something, maybe, no? Okay. All right. Kim, any conversation? Okay. It's been moved and seconded to move the CEC charge to the committee for review, and I'll bring it back with any suggested changes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. Okay, Dana, we are behind. You have the CLNA update.
You missed one line.
Did I miss a line already? Statutory requirements for minutes. Oh, sorry. So,
Snuck in there. I said it snuck in there.
so that one is just a reminder that minutes do need to be posted, and they need to be posted online within 5 business days of the meeting. And so that when they come into the office, they have to go up online as a draft set of meeting minutes, and then once they're approved, then that draft would then be removed from that. But there is a statutory requirement that we do need to meet, and we do need to make sure that they're posted. So-
And we can get them online as soon as the draft is available. We usually review those. Those can be posted immediately, and then they go into the packet for you to review, yeah.
Okay. And that really doesn't need a motion because that's statute. Now, CLNA update, and we are.
Okay, so what I did this time was I provided you a copy of our entire text. And we will take just a few minutes to review some of the responses for that. Jay, I don't know if you can pull that up and put it on the overhead from the board packet, and I'll walk us through.
I was going to say Patrice printed, so.
Patrice did not print it.
No.
No. So we'll have to access that through the, okay.
Next.
So-
Does this address faculty and staff recruitment, retention, and professional development? Or does it, because it talks about equity and access?
There are two sets of questions.
There seem to be multiple elements.
So it is, this document addresses both faculty and staff recruitment, retention, and professional development, as well as equity and access. That's the second.
Okay, it's not very clearly distinguished.
Well, it was a work in progress, and if you slide down,
Oh, that's, yeah, that changes.
yeah, it's down on page,
Well, I got it look like that.
it's page, the transition occurs on page 6. Progress towards improving equity and access.
Yes, but that's sort of embedded in the detail.
Apologies for the formatting. We found it easiest to address them all together since there was some interplay.
Okay.
So what we have here is identifying our strengths, and as you can see, we identified the credentials of our staff, and we also looked at the professional development that is required by staff and what we support. The question about whether there are gaps in expertise, we identified social and emotional needs as well as supporting students across all programs as being one of the biggest areas to address. Faculty have also identified that they are not terribly well versed in how to promote programs. They would need asking for help in that particular area. And one of the other things is that outreach presentations could be more streamlined as we look to our audience. And that might include how to make our applications more accessible and easily completed.
Dana,
Yes.
I think you mentioned this later on in the document about the work that Mike Adams is doing with that group to
Yep.
differentiate.
Yes, we do.
Could that be cross-referenced up at the top as well? Because that's kind of that's an area of expertise.
It's one that we are actually exploring, yep. And so that is, we have plans for continuing that work.
So that might be, you might mention that that's discussed down below.
Yep.
That's all.
Great,
Just a suggestion.
thank you, yep. How does current staff capacity support future plans? We cited the mission statement, and we talk about their training in respective fields. We're also building capacities with business partners to provide ongoing exposure to new technologies and training in that regard. And We've noted that some innovations will require a comprehensive plan to identify and recruit qualified individuals to move programs forward in highly desirable fields that we currently do not offer. Next, we're looking to analyze the demographics of our faculty and staff in comparison to the makeup of the student body. And given the small number of BIPOC students in our school, we do not have instructors that reflect this particular demographic, but we will continue to reach out across the state to try to encourage greater diversity in that particular area. What does the institution do strategically to retain faculty and staff? We provide support, both financial and instructional, for professional development for all opportunities. The staff have access to professional development outside of the career center, as well as programs, trainings that we offer inside. And we use course reimbursement on a rotating schedule. There's also job-embedded professional development. And each new instructor is paired with a mentor. When we're looking at support for faculty and staff recruitment and retention through benefits, we are very well compensated. We are very competitive with our closest neighbor, and we are, in some areas, higher than everybody else in the county. What does the institution do to recruit faculty and staff? Will reflect the diversity of the community. We are reflective of the general wider community, but we are looking to advertise more widely, which we have done, to try to attract additional candidates with expertise from outside our general county area. We also listed in here, thanks to Fred Kenny, a census of quick facts on the diversity of Assistive County, which, as you probably all know, is not terribly wide. How does the institution recruit faculty who have pursued non-traditional fields? We noted that we have 2 instructors on staff right now who are from non-traditional fields, and we make every effort to encourage a variety of applicants to participate. Those 2 non-traditional female instructors in diesel, power technology, and engineering.
Just clarifying question. We
Yep.
capitalize diesel tech, but we don't capitalize engineering. Is there a reason for that, or? Just asking.
Don't know. It's inconsistency.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know.
It probably depended on who was actually the author, because we have multiple authors for these responses, so it could be a little bit of inconsistency there.
Okay.
I'm curious whether or not the question relates to gender as non-traditional, or whether, this question may typically be asked in that way, and I'm just not familiar with it. The response seems to think that that's what's being asked about.
And it is, and I can tell you that we have a little inside information. We have to report on non-traditional students participating in programs, and the AOE tells us what is traditional, what is non-traditional.
Okay.
So diesel tech is traditionally not female. And engineering is traditionally not.
Okay.
So
I just
that's why you
figure out what they meant by that. Like,
we put those in as examples. So we have to make all of our research available to the AOE, but they're not going to be reading the 10,000 pages that we've generated. They will be reading synopses, and they will spot check some of our links. So this document is not like, it's 13 pages, they're not likely to read.
This is a summary.
It's a summary, and they're likely to read certain aspects that are related to the questions that they wanted.
I just suspected the question meant that, but I couldn't figure it out.
No, we have had to go through that a couple of times on
Yeah.
questions that have been raised.
Can I ask a question about
Sure.
that? Because I had a sort of a red flag, like, are females really considered non-traditional? whatever. So maybe it should say, instead of in regards to gender, in regards to the type of program?
We can clarify the question
I'm just,
ourselves, right?
yeah,
The question's being asked by AOE.
Right,
Right.
and our response needs.
Could clarify what they mean in the question for anybody outside of AOE.
Right, anybody else, we need to respond in a way that AOE will understand how we're handling it. And we can interpret that for the general population. So, what we've done right now. So. Post-secondary credentials, does that satisfactorily answer your question, Christine?
I guess so.
Good.
Not really, but
Well,
because what you just said was, like in engineering and diesel, it's not typical for a female to be an instructor.
No, sorry.
Oh,
What I said is that engineering and diesel power are not traditional fields for females.
right,
Therefore, having a female instructor is a role model to encourage greater participation
By females.
for gender diversity.
okay.
So
I just,
it-
when I read non-traditional fields, I don't get gender diversity necessarily. I sort of suspected that might be why you responded that way.
we get plenty of spreadsheets that tell us.
No, I know you got it from the right place. I'm just saying that we might clarify in
Yeah,
our response for the general public.
Yes,
You
exactly.
got that from.
As opposed to.
That would help, I think, because
We're writing, this is being written for a particular audience that
Yeah.
we
Yes.
understand.
And a lot
Yeah.
of ladies who might not agree with it.
right, I just.
Oh, no, yeah, that's not meant to.
Yeah. As defined by the AOE or something.
Right, we are writing this.
Non-traditional as defined by the AOE.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
thank you, that helps.
As we move on, we are looking at post-secondary credentials, tier 2 IRCs. We're looking for candidates who possess both expertise in the field that can actually instruct and provide training in the industry recognized credentials, which are considered post-secondary credentials. Those are tier 2. Those are credentials of value that have been recognized once again by AOE. We provide a lot of industry credentials, not all of which qualify as tier 2. The other area that we're looking for is fast forward, and we're looking for instructors who are qualified with a bachelor's degree at least, to be able to instruct programs that would be eligible for dual enrollment credit. If we don't have an instructor that can do that, we have to find a partnership where somebody can actually provide that. And we've talked about that in here. And we gave an example of somebody who's pursuing their teacher apprenticeship program at BTC, and they are going to earn their bachelor's degree when they're done, which would then qualify them to be a dual enrollment certified instructor.
Okay, and when this also refers to post-secondary credentials,
Yes.
which I'm assuming is anything outside of tier 2 IRCs,
That the post-secondary credentials are tier 2 IRCs.
but it would also refer to things like having a master's degree in architecture or
Okay.
registered architect or registered structural engineer.
Right, but our students couldn't qualify to get those at this level, at the secondary level. This is a question about what is available for our
For
students
students
to
to
advance.
Well, and
beyond.
it actually is, the faculty have the credentials to become approved to teach for post-secondary credentials.
So, when they're talking about, the,
I'm just wondering if you can make more hay out of something you already have.
I don't think so, I'd love to, but I don't think that we can, because if they could, AOE is always open to the idea that some credential that is in the field, that is recognized as something that you do after high school, if we can earn that through apprenticeship and job shadows and a variety of other trainings, that's a feather in our cap. The other component is teaching coursework that is recognized by a post-secondary institution, higher ed, CCV, VTC, somebody else, and they have to have credentials that that institution would recognize for them to be able to award credit to our students for college classes. Kind of like AP, but that gets awarded after the fact. These are while the students are taking them, and when they successfully complete the class, they get those post-secondary credits. So they distinguish between credentials, which are certificates, and credits, which are college coursework. And we are working at the same time, simultaneously, to address both things. Pathways to Educator licensure, we talked about that. Looking to make sure that they are supported. We provide course reimbursement for people to participate in the TAP program, the Teacher Apprenticeship Program at UTC. And we could emphasize a little bit more, particularly with the pandemic, how our staff could access EAP, which is Employment Assistance Program, that we have if there are concerns about psychology and emotional needs that we can't address ourselves. So that would be helpful. And we also have other support personnel on the staff that can help them. Professional development, to what extent does our institution offer regular substitute professional development with bi-weekly PLC meetings? We also have 7 half-day and 7 half-day and 7 full-day professional trainings that we can organize. We can bring in people from outside to do those, and we can also facilitate them ourselves. A good case in point, like you were saying earlier, the work that we were doing with the Inclusive Education Project was facilitated by outside people. That we came in, they gave us some tools and strategies, and we were able to share those with the staff.
So are we missing something after Beyond Bias training through the Center for, thank you, because there was Center, then comma, I always.
Yeah, I caught that the other day, Jay, and I forgot to fill it in. Anyway,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Actually, we're doing this with all of you so that you can help us with our.
Oh, we're the edit crew?
Yeah, right.
Oh, okay. Well, if we're the edit crew, I'm glad that this is going to the AOE, because the other thing I was going to say is you've got way too many initials in here for this to go anywhere else but the AOE.
Well, I will say this, we do have an outside review team that helps us go over this, and we just met with them 2 days ago. So they made some suggestions that help improve the presentation of these responses. So we're looking for, that's why we do it with you as well, so that we can try to refine the responses so that they have less, so that they have where are we? Professional development offerings, most highly valued. We've gotten some feedback from the staff, and we put those down. Focus on learning scales, assessments, and differentiated instruction are some of the high points. What do the educators need and preferences? Once again, opportunities to observe others, number of staff, report line, self-care and social emotional professional development. That's one of the things that we could do, we referenced earlier, with EAP and how we can work that in. And then they mentioned differentiated instruction and how to handle online tools. What's the institution's professional development offerings, what roles they play, and ensure that they remain current. People in the same industry, they're able to get together, and we can differentiate our PD based on those interests, and our advisories can serve, and many have stepped up and said that they would offer opportunities for staff to come in, do training, and some shadowing, just like the students do, for a period of time, and they'd be open to that idea. What role can professional development play in improving?
Steve,
Could I,
Oh, sorry.
These two sections, what opportunities do we provide for them to be able to go to other CTEs and see other instructors in their field? Because, like, the English department can have somebody observe another English class in school, but it's a little hard for these guys to be able to do that because there's usually only one instructor in that field. So, do we provide those opportunities?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And they actually start on there's a required component of the teacher apprenticeship program where they are required for part of their coursework to go out and do that, to shadow and do surveys with other centers. We also provide the opportunity for them to participate in cluster meetings around the state. That happens 2 or 3 times a year, and they're given release time. They've been conducting those more remotely than they have in the past, which used to be in person, and that allows a lot more flexibility for the teachers to jump on really quickly, and then you're only spending the amount of time that the cluster meeting is open over a Zoom meeting. So we do that, and then we give them release time and hire sites to cover.
Should that cluster release time be noted here?
Sure. I know we put it someplace else, but maybe not. You want to just add a cluster release time there, Jim? What role can professional, oh, sorry.
To go back to the previous bullet, jump rope, we acquired that a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah.
Pretty expensive, I recall. Who's
Everything,
who's been using that?
everybody.
So they have.
required it, yeah.
But because we said that they'd like to have.
So it's linked to curriculum,
Yeah.
and some people aren't as comfortable as others on how they link their learning targets within the actual program itself. So they might be able to, they're in a Google Doc and they put the learning target up and they say how that's going to be broken down and executed in the lesson. Jump rope has different ways that you can assign those things as you're grading so that you can get a profile of the student, and they only can have the technical aspects of it.
Okay.
And it's not as expensive as the system that we retired. So. What role can professional development play in improving one or more Perkins accountability student performance measures? We have that elsewhere. Progress towards improving equity and access. We continue to work. This is the.
So this is a new sort of section, right?
This is the new section. This is the equity and access. There are
So,
two areas that
This
we
is
were.
the text.
yeah, bigger. Start a new page. And this
Call
is
it number 2 or something.
This is a
We'll
totally different.
we'll take care
Just
of it.
bump it up and outline.
Yeah, I'll highlight that. So we'll continue our work, as you were mentioning, Steve, earlier, to have that related back up to the top with Katie Novak and the Inclusive Ed program. Our student performance data reflect that we trail most of the state indicators for student proficiency regarding special populations. And we've noted here that only, actually, yeah, you can see that. Only half of the students with disabilities are reaching proficiency in math, and only a third are reaching of the number of proficient students with disabilities in language arts. So we have some work that needs to be done in there compared to our peers across the state.
But you are doing that work in conjunction with their sending schools, I would presume.
Yes, that is a requirement, and I will not comment, if that's okay, on the status of the students when we get them, because we have done some
Right.
examination.
No, but I don't want people to think that that's just a career center
No, it is not.
piece, that it's the career center's issue to make these students reach proficiency in math or language arts, that
It's a collective
It's a-
responsibility.
right.
But I'm just sharing that our data reflect that we are trailing some of
Right.
our partner career centers. That may be partially our responsibility or fault, and it may be related to other factors outside of our career center practices.
I think it might be worth differentiating, words, or it might be clarifying that, that we're trailing most of our partner career center.
I thought I said that. I thought this was not I, but I thought that that's what this said. That we trail most of the state indicators for proficiency. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Just clarify you're
yeah,
comparing this to the other career
Yes.
centers. I think that's the issue, not necessarily that we're, failing
Right.
in general, because I know we have similar numbers for
Right.
even our non-disabled students in some cases.
Christina?
Well, in a line where, in particular, we only have half the students with disabilities, and I'm just wondering, do you need to clarify, is it learning disabilities, or is it multiple kinds of disabilities, or are you specifically talking about learning disabilities?
So help me get a focus on where.
So the line starts at we only
Yeah,
have
it's
half
not-
of the
It's not
students with
differentiated for us,
disabilities.
so they're identified as students on plans, basically. So
Students
special
on plan.
populations, yeah.
Special populations,
We
right?
don't have data that specifically states learning disability, physical
Yeah.
disability.
Okay.
Yeah,
They're all lumped together.
they're all together.
If they have that coding, then they are tracked as a cohort, and our data trail state data as well as ours.
So when you say a plan, you're talking about IEP?
IEP
Could be an
or
IEP, could be a 504 plan, could be an EST
Oh, it
plan.
could be any plan.
I think I
So is it more appropriate to refer to it that way rather than disabilities, or that's just how?
Does it say disabilities?
Yes,
Yeah.
it does.
Students on plans or students on, I don't know, learning
Half of the
plans or
students
what
have
is?
It
disabilities.
says special populations, but I think it's the disabilities of.
No, it says disabilities.
It does.
Yes.
Half of the students with disabilities reaching
Right.
proficiency. Is that a piece of data that Jay
It
was
says-
at in one of those?
But it says students
They're
on
always
educational
identified as-
plans?
Students with disabilities.
Yeah, that's a good educational plan, Susie?
But your EST students aren't students with
No,
disabilities.
they aren't. They aren't, that's true.
And the document from here on uses the term disability frequently.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so
So-
I'll just,
We should probably resolve.
Should it talk about students on educational plans, or is that not true in that cohort?
Well, in that cohort, I don't think you would have, you should not have EST plans. If you're speaking of students with special needs being a special population, your EST plan shouldn't be
Okay,
in there.
so it gets a little complicated when you have, for example, an ELL that is
Right.
not a disabled student,
Sure.
that would be
Yeah.
covered under an EST plan. They are still a special population. We do have to resolve this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to
because-
resolve this
Maybe there's a
disability.
little preamble definition or something
Yeah.
that just
Yeah.
clarifies what students you're putting under this category.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, because ELL students, we can't, for most of them, we can't determine a disability because the testing that's required isn't in their own language.
right. And sometimes if you actually believe there's a student whose primary language is a different language, then you need to assess them in a different language in order to be able to rule out the fact that it's not a language barrier, that it's a truly disability. But that's
Right.
another thing altogether. So, yeah, we will look at this for consistency purposes. Where was I? So access towards, progress towards equity and access. Some of the work will be informed by data from other sections, that's just a note to ourselves. And what else do we have? We're talking about the Inclusive Education Project Team. That will help with identifying those special populations and opportunities to differentiate.
Steve, was that you got a question?
Oh, no, I was trying to figure out where we were in the
Oh,
document.
okay.
And I'm going, oh,
Yeah.
I
It
found
wasn't
it.
sure, I saw the hand go like
No,
this,
no,
and I was like, is that a question?
Thinking with my hands, sorry.
We have some program institutional enrollment data, which populations are underrepresented and which are overrepresented.
Scroll down, Jay.
Thank you.
We also have addressed, overall lack of diversity in Addison County. We did note that there are a couple of programs that do tend to attract a more racially diverse population, as well as gender and gender orientation diverse population, and those are in the arts, both ART and design administration. Recognizing the patterns with respect to disabilities once again.
Yeah.
With culinary, technical communications, digital human services. We have identified some of those. Overall, pre-tech programs have a significantly lower rate of students with disabilities in technical programs. Now, that data came from Mike, is that right, Jay? And that's how that was presented?
No, I think Len put that together.
Len put that together.
Yeah, he had the bar graphs.
The bar graphs, yep. But he got the data from Mike. Anyway, so it may be a translation in terms of how our own staff are using it. What extent of special populations? Special populations is broader than students with disabilities. Students with disabilities are subcategories,
Well, okay.
including
Right.
homeless and,
Right, but then if you refer, you start with special populations and then you go into disabilities,
Yep.
it's, you're like pulling out a subset then.
Yeah.
And it just seems a little weird.
How would you say?
Special populations are special needs. And special needs isn't necessarily a disability.
And special needs is not necessarily special populations either. So,
So is disability here again referring to students on plans? When we're saying disability?
I think that that's what that data was
In
representing.
my
that Glenn put
world,
together.
yes,
Okay.
that's what it would mean, is that
Yeah.
students on IEPs or 504s.
Yeah.
But
Because they
I
have to
don't,
recognize it.
Some kind of a upfront definition, clarify, and if you could also develop an acronym in that, it would help you shorten up. a lot of
Yeah,
this.
we have to be careful because we have to use the terminology that is given to us in the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we need to make sure, but having said that, we do need to make sure that there's a consistency of use of our terminology.
right,
Right.
And sometimes the subset of the population, special populations, may be only students with disabilities. So we might find that the
Might
students
have to actually.
with racial diversity don't exhibit that
Right.
profile difference. Or somebody with, that's homeless or an ELL may not. But then you're talking about a really small population there.
Yeah.
Our biggest population, our biggest special population is those with disability because it represents about 40% of our career center enrollment. So you actually have an end that you can compare with some degree of validity. So, anyway, the other ones, we might have 0 out of 1, or we might have 1 out of 1. In both 100% and 0% does not necessarily
Yeah.
reflect the state of the situation accurately. We're always looking to expand promotional opportunities to diversify. The gender representation, that's an easy one because we have a countywide, we have a fairly 50-50 split, maybe 52-48, but we could do a better job at that. We ran an effective gender panel discussion this year where we had 3 out of 4 members from industry in a highly male-dominant industry being presenting to our students and helping create that awareness. And it was prompted by a non-traditional student reaching out to actually talk about how to improve the program. We can be more proactive with that. We can also include diversity questions in our hiring process. That was a suggestion from one of our outside reviewers. Do programs reflect the racial diversity of communities? We just answered that, yes.
One and only short answer.
That's the one and only short.
Yeah.
We wish that it was
short,
different,
sweet.
but it's true.
Like I like it.
Everybody was fighting over how to answer that question. We spent more time debating who should answer it rather than just letting them know. Do the students who are members of special populations successfully complete? Did we not answer that question?
No, there's no answer there.
I have to say, the one-word answer speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so we need to answer one of those that we have. When you compare student performance data to special populations, what do you find? And once again, we repeated that statement from up above, and we'll look at the disability part. But that's an area of concern for us. There are some special populations where there's no discrepancy.
Right.
The N is pretty small. Promotional materials and recruitment practices, we need to do more in this area. How do the promotional materials reflect the diversity of
Okay, can you
students?
scroll? Thank you.
And our website and course catalog present pictures of a variety of students in different contexts. That's good. We think that's important. One thing that became apparent after the review of our meter is that there are no examples of racial diversity. This is an area where we can make a more concerted effort to include those students in the portrait of our student body. How do you actively recruit students who are underrepresented? We encourage underrepresented students to reach out to friends to share their experiences with them, and it was something that's really fun. We ask students to provide testimonials and interview them with their experiences, and we have tried this year, we tried this a year ago with co-op to foster more interest in participating in a learning experience, and we're happy to report that our co-op career exploration and guidance activities. To fit goals and interests, we have 6 pre-tech programs located in 2 areas, both here and in Virgins. And we focus on a variety of topics such as design, construction, repairs, measurements, etc. These offerings permit students to explore aspects of technical programs that they might like to undertake. And our 10th graders, we have all 10th graders visit from our area high school. And 8th grade students from 3 middle schools also visit one of our programs to get a quick taste of what we have. We have taken advantage of a time grant that is allowing us to have a week-long summer program. We have 2 programs that are being offered, and we have students from all 3 partner districts, so that's great. And we also have our open house to conduct people in. We collaborate with the Makery and Adult Ed to provide additional opportunities and sharing of equipment like our virtual developers. We were able to acquire 2 virtual developers several years ago as a result of an Adult Ed grant, and we have used those in our secondary program, and we can use those with outreach. How do you ensure efforts effectively reach members of special populations? This is a tough question, but we communicate our opportunities to our partners, and we ask for their assistance because they are probably better placed to know who are particular members of special populations. And we actively reach out to our home study population. We reported prior to COVID that we had a huge surge in home study participation. Student support systems, we have a whole list here. I'm not going to go through those individually, but which ones are the most effective and which are underutilized. Mike Adaman does an exceptional job with his team to be able to think of all types of creative ways to reach students and provide them with provide teachers with strategies and students with resources to be successful. So I'm going to skip past that. Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Looks like the first bullet isn't answered, and then
Which one's the
everything is
most
put on
effective
under
is not
bullet.
answered?
It's answered later.
Okay.
Those are both, they're both combined. When the support team looked at these, they answered that at the end, and they put the which is most effective down the bottom.
If you scroll down a little bit,
If you
they
scroll.
are answered individually after the list.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I will,
Yeah.
oh, I see, okay.
Mike should realize
Kind of
the
confusing.
legal definition
Yeah,
of the
it's not.
AOE for what a scribe is. Because if you read that, you don't want to do it.
Right, you're supposed to put exactly down what it is.
So what the AOE, that legal definition of a scribe is that any word that's longer than 3 letters the student needs to spell out. They need to tell you where to capitalize and put any punctuation. So by that point, you might as well
You might as well use text-to-speech.
text-to-speech.
So if you scroll back up above those 2 bullets,
What do you want me to
no,
do?
question, where it says question 1.
Yeah.
So accommodations,
So I
modifications,
think
and support
you could get rid of the
services.
2 bullets.
Yeah.
We probably could.
And just have the list
And
under
then answer
question
the questions.
1.
Yep.
Because then you answer them.
So we'll explain this. This was done in a slightly different way, but for consistency purposes, I just did a cut and paste so that you would have all of this in one document because it wasn't existing in one document. So I'll take ownership of that. I just copied what they had responded to and didn't make any adjustments. So here's the first question, which of these is most effective? And they feel that they're all equally important and effective. But perhaps the most effective is the collaborative communication between the Career Center and our partners in terms of understanding what the students are getting for resources so that we don't invest in duplicative efforts if it's not needed and that we can complement each other in terms of those supports. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask because Jane had the list going back and forth. I couldn't read it. Did you have on there assistive technology?
Yes.
Okay.
They have, there are a variety of assistive technologies that he has listed. There are books on tape, there's text-to-speech.
Do they use like the reading pen, things like that?
I
That's
think so.
That is assistive technology.
Yep.
So that,
I think they do have one of those
Okay.
as well. Which are underutilized. Speech-to-text technology, such as OpenLaw and Natural Reader, are perhaps the most underutilized. The students need a little bit more training in how to
Yes.
effectively useless.
Yep. And it takes a while to train your voice to the software.
To the software, exactly. Question 2, what additional accommodations, modifications, supportive services would help? The team felt that they're adequately equipped to provide accommodations and modifications and support services in an attempt to maximize student outcomes. So they didn't identify anything here that would be additional services. They feel that they're pretty successful with the students when they support them. Student survey data, what equity and access barriers have what concerns emerge from student survey, and how do you address them? So, as you can see on the screen, of 93 non-PAHCC students responding, only 60% agreed that this was a statement that high school teachers and counselors encouraged them to explore attending PAHCC.
That's pretty frightening.
Yep.
On a similar survey, 122 PAHCC students, the ones that we have now, the others were ones that never came to us. Well, 5% of the students actually responded that they had reported enrolling in spite of the fact that counselors and teachers discouraged them from participating. It's hard to know the profile of the students discouraged from attending, but it may be reasonable to guess that more academically successful students are discouraged from attending. In fact, I know that some have actually had to advocate for themselves and say they wanted a career experience in spite of what others were told. 31% of our student body has one or more identified disabilities. This number is 27% for VUHS, 20% for non-aided, and 10% for MUHS. That's data, 2020 data from AOE. Possible ways to address this pattern include engaging advisory members, recruitment, outreach to both high school students and their teachers, and expanding pre-tech offerings program.
So, question.
Yeah.
Are you saying that possible ways to address the pattern is the 31% of the student body has one or more identified disabilities? Or are you saying that possible ways to address the pattern goes all the way back to the top about students being discouraged and not told that they could?
Good question.
I'm a little confused, so,
I'm
sorry.
Jay, is this also
not even
one that
sure what
blended?
the while
'Cause I don't- I
31% of the
just-
sentence is doing in this paragraph.
Say again, Steve?
I'm not even sure what the while 31%, that sentence that starts while 31%.
Yeah, I didn't know, that's why I
I'm not
skipped
sure
it.
why that sentence is even in this paragraph.
You didn't do this one,
I didn't.
Because you're talking about information you got from student surveys.
Yeah, and then if you talk.
well, what equity and access barriers or concerns emerge from student survey data? Okay. We addressed the student survey questions up above, and, you know, that's a good question. Well, we're still trying to look at, yeah, I don't know, let's put a question mark on it. You got it, Jay?
Yeah. And I'm also a little uncomfortable with, it's hard to know the profile. You're kind of speculating and throwing a little shade on the sending schools without any data to back that up.
So, tell me more.
So when you say it's hard to know the profile of students discouraged from attending, right there you're saying we don't have the data. But it may be reasonable to guess that more academically successful students are discouraged from attending, resulting in a slightly disproportionate number of students with disabilities. That's a pretty explosive statement. That the sending schools are purposely discouraging academically successful students without data to back it up. I mean, I know you said you knew some people, but that's kind of anecdotal, and I would,
Well, now I see why the while 31% is in there. It's like you're trying to make an argument for an equity concern emerging from the data.
It doesn't flow, it needs to be broken up into chunks or something.
Well, it's, It's also trying to potentially explain why you have a higher percentage of special needs students.
It could, I mean, you could equally argue that from the data that you were talking about before, that the programs like culinary and diesel and would be more attractive to students who have disabilities because they're not interested in going into math or science or, so.
There could be a lot of explanations.
You're right, there could be a lot of explanations here, and you're kind of saying, well, the sending schools are discouraging academic students from coming. And I think you would need a little bit more powerful data to make that statement.
Yeah, the paragraphs above where Jay is highlighting right now, I mean, that's good information to have, and it's interesting
Yes.
information.
Yes.
But I think the argument that's made after that is a bit specious.
Good point.
I mean, I think it's tricky because it's like the undercurrent of what we kind of all know kind of happens, you know what I mean? I mean, it's just what it is, and
Yeah.
it's been this way for a very long time. But how to actually articulate it in a
So that's not
useful
inflammatory.
way.
So it's
Neutral,
not inflammatory.
factual way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and it does need to be addressed, and I don't really know what the answer there is. Is it having school counselors come here and tour?
Well, that is something that we know we have to do, as
Right.
well as special educators.
So it does need to be fixed.
There are some things, and I won't go into the details, but we have had some fairly protracted meetings about the appropriateness of certain students being in programs which we believe may actually be a question of whether they're getting an appropriate learning opportunity.
Mhm.
And so there are some things that are real issues, and I don't think that this was stated to cast aspersions on anybody, but to just highlight. And we can go back, Jay and I will go back and talk with the rest of our team about how we can characterize that in a slightly more neutral way that would identify the situation rather than a proposed cause.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that we can go to causality.
I mean,
without
highlighting
having-
the issues is not objectionable, it's just.
Right.
Right.
So we'll do that. Thank you, that was a good point. And same thing with the possible ways to address it. One of the things in the AOE's goals for CTE is to change the perception of CTE, which has been a
Oh,
long-standing,
my goodness.
identified issue for programming around the state. So this may be influenced by some of that, but we can do a better job of trying to be objective.
But the whole CTE has had a long history of trying to move away from the thought of CTE is where you place